My name is Warren Albright. I'm 63 years old, retired from the U.S. Postal Service after 34 years, and I live in a 2-story colonial on Birchwood Lane in Akron, Ohio, a house I bought with my wife Sandra back in 1991. We painted every room ourselves. We planted the oak tree in the backyard the summer our son turned 5. Sandra passed from ovarian cancer 7 years ago, and after that, it was just me and that house and all 32 years of memories inside it. I want to tell you what my brother-in-law tried to do to me, and I want to tell you exactly how it ended. Sandra's younger brother is a man named Victor Hale. Victor is 56, lives up in Cleveland, and has an MBA from Case Western Reserve that he mentions approximately once every 45 minutes in any given conversation. He spent his career in commercial real estate, buying properties, flipping them, leveraging assets, talking about cap rates at the dinner table like the rest of us were supposed to be impressed. Sandra used to squeeze my hand under the table when he started in on it. We'd look at each other, and she'd press her lips together to keep from smiling. I love my wife more than I have words for, and I tried, for her sake, to get along with Victor. After Sandra died, Victor called me every few weeks. Checking in, he said. Seeing how I was holding up, I appreciated it. Or I thought I did. Looking back now, I understand that what Victor was actually doing was taking inventory. The house on Birchwood Lane sat on a corner lot, 1/3 of an acre, mature trees, a finished basement, a 2-car garage. Zillow had it somewhere north of $380,000 by 2022. Victor knew that number. Victor probably knew it better than I did. Commercial real estate is his whole personality after all. About 2 years after Sandra passed, Victor started bringing things up. Small things at first. That's a big house for one person, Warren. And then, you know the market is insane right now. You could cash out and live very comfortably somewhere smaller. And then, more directly, have you thought about what happens to the property when you're gone? I told him I had a will. He said a will wasn't the most efficient vehicle. He started using words like stepped-up basis and estate tax exposure and probate costs. I'm a retired postal worker, not a financial planner, and I'll admit there were moments where I wondered if maybe he had a point. Maybe I wasn't handling things the way Sandra would have wanted. Maybe the house was too big. Maybe I was being naive. That's the thing about grief. It makes you doubt yourself in ways you never expected. Victor knew that, whether consciously or not. It was my daughter who first said it out loud. Her name is Renee. She's 31, works as a physical therapist over in Fairlawn, and she has a mother's eyes and a mother's habit of cutting straight to the truth when everyone else is dancing around it. We were sitting at my kitchen table one Sunday morning in the spring of last year, and she said, "Dad, I think Uncle Victor wants the house." I told her that was a little unfair. Victor was just being helpful. She put her coffee mug down. "He's been calling you twice a week. He sent you articles about downsizing 3 times this month. Last week he mentioned unprompted that he knew a developer who was interested in corner lots in this neighborhood." She looked at me steadily. "Does that sound like just being helpful?" I didn't say anything. "He doesn't have kids," she continued. "Aunt Sandra's share of Grandma's estate went to you when she passed. The house is the biggest asset you have. You need to protect it, Dad. Properly." I sat with that for a few days. I turned it over. I thought about Victor's MBA and his cap rates, and the way he'd started CCing me on emails from a financial advisor he knew, a man named Stewart from a firm in Beechwood. I thought about how every time I mentioned my own finances, Victor was quick to offer to take a look and simplify things. And then I called an estate attorney. Her name is Patricia Okafor, and a friend from my old mail route had recommended her years ago when he was sorting out his mother's affairs. I drove downtown and sat in her office for 2 hours. I told her everything. Sandra's death, the house, Victor's suggestions, the emails, the Stewart from Beechwood situation. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her hands and said, "Mr. Albright, I'd like to ask you something directly. Has your brother-in-law asked you to sign anything?" "Not yet," I told her. "He will," she said. "Let me explain what an irrevocable trust can do for you." She walked me through it over the next hour. An irrevocable trust would take the house out of my personal estate entirely. Victor, or anyone else, couldn't pressure me into signing anything related to it because there would be nothing to sign. The house would be protected, with me holding a life estate, meaning I could live there until I died. After that, it would pass directly to Renee, outside of probate, outside of anyone's interference. The trust would name Patricia herself as co-trustee alongside Renee. I asked her what this would cost. She told me. It was not cheap. I wrote the check without blinking. We completed the paperwork over the following 6 weeks. I didn't tell Victor. I didn't tell anyone except Renee, who sat in on the final signing and cried a little, which made me cry a little, which made me cry a little, which we both agreed not to mention to anyone ever. And then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. Victor called me on a Tuesday in late August. He had some good news, he said. Stuart, the financial advisor from Beechwood, had put together a proposal he wanted to share with me. Something about a family investment structure that could reduce my estate tax exposure and simplify asset management. He used those words exactly. Family investment structure. Could he come down to Akron on Saturday? He'd bring Stuart. We could go over everything together. I said sure. Saturday worked fine. Come on over. I'd make coffee. I called Patricia that afternoon and told her. She said, "Good. Don't say anything about the trust. Let them present whatever they're going to present. Then call me." Saturday morning. Victor arrived at 10. He was wearing pressed slacks and a sport coat, which should have told me everything I needed to know about what kind of visit this was. Stuart pulled up right behind him, mid-40s, briefcase, the kind of tan you get from golf courses rather than actual outdoors. They came inside. I poured 3 cups of coffee, and we sat at the same kitchen table where Renee had first said what she said. Stuart opened his briefcase and spread out a packet of papers. It was professional-looking, color charts, projected returns, a glossy cover page with a wealth management logo on it. Victor leaned forward in his chair with the energy of a man who'd rehearsed this. The proposal was, and I want to be precise here, for me to transfer ownership of the house into an LLC, a limited liability company, structured, Stuart explained, as a family asset protection vehicle. Victor and I would be co-managers. The LLC would lease the property back to me at a nominal rate. Stuart actually used the phrase nominal rate as if I wouldn't know that meant I'd be paying rent in my own house, and the arrangement would supposedly shield the property from creditors and reduce probate costs when I eventually died. Victor watched me reading through the pages. He said, "The key thing, Warren, is that Sandra would have wanted this taken care of. She wouldn't have wanted you carrying all this alone." That was the moment I understood it completely. He invoked my wife's name to sell me on signing over my house to a company he would co-control. He looked me in the eyes and said, "Sandra's name." I kept my face very neutral. I've been married 32 years and a postal worker for 34. I have dealt with every kind of weather and every kind of person. I can keep a neutral face. I told them I'd need a few days to look everything over before I signed anything. Victor pushed back gently. Stuart had another client interested in a similar structure. There were timing considerations. But I said I was sorry. I just wasn't comfortable signing something same day, and that was that. They packed up the briefcase and left. When Victor's car turned off Birchwood Lane, I picked up my phone and called Patricia. She said, "Describe the structure exactly." I did. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What they're describing would have given your brother-in-law co-management rights over your primary residence. With the right series of votes, he could have forced a sale. Warren, you were smart not to sign." I told her I wasn't done yet. I asked her what my options were. Here's what she told me. The trust was already done. The house was protected regardless. But if Victor tried something more aggressive, if he tried to claim I lacked capacity or challenged the trust on grounds that I'd been improperly advised, I'd want documentation showing that I was fully informed and had acted independently. She suggested I write everything down, every call, every visit, every email, dates, times, what was said. She also asked whether Victor had ever made any representations to me about what the LLC structure would accomplish. Specifically, whether he'd claimed it was purely for my benefit. I said yes, multiple times, on recorded voicemail in fact because I'd started saving them. She said, "Good." Then she asked me to do one more thing. She wanted me to invite Victor back, not Stuart, just Victor, and have a conversation. I called Victor the following Monday, told him I'd been thinking about the proposal, asked if he could come back down. Just the two of us. I had some questions. He agreed immediately. He offered to come that Thursday. I want to be careful here about what I describe, so I'll just say this. I had a conversation with Victor on my back porch on a Thursday afternoon in September. IO is a one-party consent state, meaning only one party to a conversation needs to consent to it being recorded. I consented. My phone was in my shirt pocket. Victor talked for about 40 minutes. He covered a lot of ground. He mentioned more than once that as the only remaining family member with financial expertise, it really fell to him to make sure Sandra's estate, he kept calling it Sandra's estate, as though it still belonged to her, was handled correctly. He said he'd already spoken to a developer who was interested in the corner lot. He said the offer would be substantial. He said we could split proceeds through the LLC structure in a way that was very favorable for both of us. He talked about my wife's estate and a developer who was already lined up in the same breath. On a Thursday afternoon on my back porch, while I poured him sweet tea and said, tell me more, I sent the recording to Patricia that evening. She called me back within the hour. "Warren," she said, "this goes further than estate planning pressure," what he described, the existing developer contact, the intent to sell without your full informed consent, the misrepresentations about what the LLC would accomplish. I want to walk you through something. She walked me through it. I listened. I asked questions, and when we were done, I asked her who else I should call. Victor sent me a follow-up email 4 days later with the LLC formation documents attached. He said Stuart had everything ready. All I needed to do was sign the operating agreement and the property transfer form, and they could file with the Ohio Secretary of State by end of month. I didn't respond to the email. Renee called me that night. She'd seen me looking at something on my laptop and asked what was going on. I told her everything, all of it, start to finish. She sat very still in the way her mother used to sit when she was processing something serious. Then she said, "What do we do?" I told her Patricia had already made some calls on our behalf. What followed, I'll be honest, took longer than I expected and was less dramatic than the movies make it look. There was no single moment where someone burst through the door in handcuffs. What there was a letter from the Ohio Attorney General's office, and then a visit from an investigator with the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Securities because Stuart's credentials, when properly examined, turned out to have some gaps that regulators found interesting, and then a separate conversation between Patricia and a detective in Cuyahoga County about the specific statements Victor had made regarding the developer who was already lined up. Victor called me 3 times in October. I let all 3 go to voicemail. Patricia had advised me not to speak with him directly anymore. His 4th call came from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't pick up. When I did, his voice was different, quieter, careful. He said he thought there'd been some misunderstanding. He said he'd only ever been trying to look out for me, for Sandra's memory, for the family. I said, "Victor, I need you to know something. The house has been in an irrevocable trust since May. The co-trustee is my attorney. There was never anything for you to sign or sell or transfer. There was no estate to restructure." Silence. The recording from the back porch is with my attorney, I said. The emails are documented. Stuart's licensing issues are currently under review by the Division of Securities. I didn't ask for any of this, Victor. You came to my kitchen table. I heard him breathe. Sandra would not have wanted this, I said. That's the last thing I'm going to say to you. I hung up. I won't pretend the whole thing didn't hurt. Victor isn't some stranger. He's the brother of the woman I loved for 32 years, sitting in that kitchen pouring coffee, watching him spread out those glossy charts and say Sandra's name to close a deal. That's not something that just slides off you. I've thought about it a lot. I think Victor convinced himself he deserved some piece of what Sandra left behind. And when grief and greed sit together long enough in a person's chest, the line between them gets blurry in a way they don't even fully recognize. I don't know if I feel sorry for him or not. Some days one way, some days the other. What I know is this. The house on Birchwood Lane is mine. It will be Renee's when I'm gone. The oak tree we planted is tall enough now that it shades half the backyard in the afternoon, and I sit under it sometimes with a glass of iced tea and think about the years Sandra and I had here. And I think she would be glad that I fought for it. She would probably also point out that I should have called Patricia a lot sooner. She was always sharper than me about people. The lesson I'd give anyone who's older, anyone who's alone, anyone who thinks maybe their instincts are just being unfair to someone they know, is this: your instincts are not being unfair. Trust them. Then call an attorney. A real one. Not your brother-in-law's golf buddy from Beechwood. If you're a senior and someone in your family starts talking about simplifying your assets, or protecting the estate, or what your late spouse would have wanted, write down the date and time. Save the voicemails, and before you sign a single piece of paper, call an estate attorney and let them read it first. An irrevocable trust with a life estate is not complicated or exotic. It is a straightforward legal tool that puts a lock on your front door that no amount of MBA talk can open. The house is mine. I earned it. Sandra and I earned it together. One mortgage payment at a time. One repainted room at a time. One summer at a time. No one takes it. I've had a lot of time to sit with all of this. And the thing that keeps coming back to me isn't the anger. The anger faded faster than I expected. What stays is something quieter. A kind of clarity about how people reveal themselves when they think you're vulnerable. Victor didn't walk into my kitchen as a villain. He walked in as family. That's the part that's hard to explain to people who haven't lived it. He knew Sandra. He sat at our Thanksgiving table for 30 years. He helped me carry her casket, and then, somewhere in the years after she was gone, he looked at the house on Birchwood Lane and started doing math. I don't think he woke up one morning and decided to be a bad person. I think he made a series of small decisions, each one a little more convenient than honest, until one Saturday morning he was sitting in my kitchen with a briefcase and a glossy packet and my dead wife's name in his mouth. That's how it usually works, I think. Not a single terrible choice, but a slow drift. What I know about consequences is this: they're almost never dramatic. Victor didn't get hauled away in handcuffs at my kitchen table. What he got was a letter from the Attorney General's office, a visit from a securities investigator, a phone call from a detective. Months of that. Quiet, methodical, grinding consequences that came directly from his own words on my back porch and his own emails in my inbox. He built the case against himself, one conversation at a time. I just kept records, and that's the thing about intelligence. Real intelligence. The kind that actually protects you. It isn't loud. Patricia never raised her voice. Renee didn't confront Victor or make threats. I sat across from that man and poured him sweet tea and said, tell me more, while my phone recorded every word. The preparation was months old before he even knocked on my door. That's not luck. That's the discipline of thinking ahead, of taking your own situation seriously enough to act before you're in crisis rather than after. There is something I want to say directly to anyone watching this who is older, who is alone, who has someone in their life talking about protecting your assets or simplifying the estate, your hesitation to believe the worst about that person is not weakness. It is human, but hesitation is not the same as inaction. You can be kind and still be careful. You can love someone and still call an attorney. Those things are not in conflict. Renee saved me really, not dramatically. She just said what she saw, clearly at a kitchen table on a Sunday morning, and trusted me to hear it. That kind of honesty is its own form of courage. She could have kept quiet to keep the peace. She chose the harder thing. The oak tree in the backyard is taller now than it's ever been. I sit under it and I feel the weight of what almost happened, and I feel the equal and opposite weight of what didn't. Sandra and I planted that tree for a reason. Even if we didn't know it then, you plant things for the people who come after you. Renee will have this house. That's what matters. That's what we fought for.